Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I know it's terribly busy these days. I did 2 interviews and we're going to publish a third, but the 2 that we've published so far, one is with Renaissance Capital's chief economist, Charlie Robertson, who's a friend and a very erudite chap. 35 minutes, really looked all around the world, from the comparison of Reagan, Japan, to Trump, China, the tariff wars, emerging markets, Africa, a most enjoyable conversation, I must say. And then also I did an interview with Kevin Daly, a senior portfolio manager at Aberdeen, more niche in this interview, talking about particularly the Eurobond markets on the continent and some of the ways that he's looking at different risk. I was making the point that I'd been to a presentation last year with Razia Khan, and absolutely every bond issuer was clustered within about 50 basis points of each other. And now we've seen that break out quite dramatically. Macro thoughts take you back to Mirrors on the Ceiling, the pink champagne on ice, and that was in September 2016, and it took a long time to unwind, but unwind it will. And I was quoting Hotel California, Mirrors on the Ceiling, the pink champagne on ice, and she said, "We are all just prisoners here of our own device." Last thing I remember, I was running for the door. The sell-off in bonds is continuing. US 10-year yields have risen to 3.09%, the highest since May. German 10-year yields have jumped above 0.5%, the highest since May as well. I like this from Vala Afshar, the 17 equations that changed the world. FAANG stocks in 2018, this is via Holger again. And you can see Facebook's underperforming, and furthermore, something that I'd said severally, except it was very choppy. But nevertheless, I think we'll continue to see underperformance out of Facebook. Home thoughts, look at this. A Samburu warrior clearing some serious air at the dance. High jumping is seen as a sign of virility and increases a man's chances of finding a wife. Therefore, I would have been left by the wayside because I do not have that kind of lift, rather flat feet as well. Moonshot, this is from High A, this is of Jogo Road, which is in the industrial area of Nairobi. I like this. Starry night with distant aurora. Astronomers at Concordia Station search for planets beyond our solar system. It's an incredible photograph. Sleeping under the stars comes to mind. Kenya is so beautiful. The view from the Taita Hills. Photos by Jason Jamhuri, and they're beautiful. CNN had these 20 best things to do in Kenya. One of them was explore Elsa's home turf. This is the Meru National Park that I visited a couple of weeks ago with Layla. One of Elsa's successors at the Meru National Park is seen in a photograph that they've taken. Kenya's famous feline was immortalized by Joy Adamson's 1960 book, Born Free, and the blockbuster movie that followed. The orphaned lioness was raised by Adamson and her husband in a part of the remote Kenyan bush that's now Meru National Park, the Adamson camp, just below a rock outcrop now called Elsa's Kopi, while her grave lies about an hour away on the north bank of the Hura River. There were a lot of American tourists and a couple that I sat with, and all excited about the Born Free story, but then I asked without thinking, do you know what happened to the 2 of them? And I was forced to explain what did. Both of them were killed, in point of fact, George by poachers and Joy by her manservant, I think. This is a short video of what I would like to think are Elsa's relatives in the Meru National Park, and this is a photograph we came across, the 3 lionesses with 3 cubs gorging on this zebra, and then on the final day we across the mail. But in a plot twist, it's not said that this is the farmer. He was an implant from Solio Ranch, where he'd been prone to attack rhinos, a rather grand beast. And it wasn't clear whether he was trying to sort of sidle his way in to this pride. None of that was clear, but it was quite extraordinary. Political reflections, he confirmed that this is Tchotcho, Cyrique, Bityala. This is this incredible BBC Africa report, which has basically triangulated the story of the military in Cameroon killing civilians. You've got to have a look at it. The link there actually links you to the entire story, how they triangulated the information. Hoya Wolf, who's a friend of mine, says, your daily lesson in open source geointelligence. And then there's a link to the thread. In July 2018, a horrifying video began to circulate on social media. 2 women and 2 young children are led away by a group of soldiers. They are blindfolded, forced to the ground, and shot 22 times. BBC Africa are investigating this atrocity. This is what we found. Well worth looking at. BUZZFLASH, and this is still not clear what's exactly happened. Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein is reportedly on the way out. It's not clear whether this was a decoy in the case of Kavanaugh, but Trump has been wanting to decapitate Rosenstein forever. Shoigu, who's the Russian defense minister, announced that Syria will be supplied with S-300 air defense missile systems within 2 weeks, and that Russia will jam SAT navigation, onboard radars and communication systems of combat aircraft which attack or target Syria. Will provide advanced S-300 missile systems to Syria, defying the calls from Israel. Look, I don't think the Kremlin had a choice. It was a put up, meaning shut Syria's airspace to Netanyahu, or forever shut up. And I'm surprised Netanyahu put it in such a way. But he is capable of overreaching himself. Ambassador John Bolton says the Russia's missile sale to Syria is a significant escalation. Secretary Pompeo and his team of MBS and MBZ, and of course MEK, whom I didn't include, thought about later, are baring their fangs. And yesterday, thousands attended a funeral for the Iran attack dead. This photograph is from AFP. The Labour Party wants to ride a Brexit wave to power. It just can't agree how. With less than 6 months to go until the UK leaves the European Union, Labour seems to have grasped the reality that the Conservative Party's crisis over Brexit presents the biggest opportunity the party has seen in nearly a decade to retake power, but that might mean overcoming Labour's own Brexit divisions and encouraging the very chaos it claims it wants to avoid. Corbyn has been under pressure from unions, Labour constituencies, campaigners to push for a new vote on Brexit. After a 5-hour debate, Sunday Labour delegates managed to agree on a motion that will be put to the conference for a vote on Tuesday. It reads, if we cannot get a general election, Labour must support all options remaining on the table, including campaigning for a public vote. You can see the hesitation in the wording. I said yesterday or the day before, why isn't Jeremy Corbyn going for it? It's a no-brainer, it really is. Tariff wars, who blinks first? We're still in the middle of that. And Pepe Escobar has talked about a 30-year trade war. Alibaba's Jack Ma has warned that the ongoing US-China trade war could last at least 20 years. As we'll see, it's actually more like 30, up to 2049, the 100th anniversary of the foundation of the People's Republic of China. Steve Bannon always boasted that President Trump was bound to conduct a sophisticated form of economic warfare to confront China. The logic underpinning the warfare is that if you squeeze the Chinese economy hard enough, Beijing will submit and play by the rules. Trump administration plan, which is in fact trade deficit hawk Peter Navarro's plan, has three basic targets: displace China from the heart of the global supply chains, force companies to source elsewhere in the global south all the components necessary for manufacturing their products, force multinational corporations to stop doing business in China. What's certain is that Beijing will not just play defense. Beijing sees the trade war as protracted. A commercial Cold War 2.0 atmosphere is now in effect, but China is fighting the ideological war on two fronts. He said, look, I stand by what I told Sputnik, which was Trump's aggressive foreign economic policy is the signature success of this administration. It's highly effective, you can keep it up, and I think it's working a treat. Very interesting article in the New Yorker, how Russia helped swing the election for Trump. Trump dismisses the idea that Russian interference affected the outcome of the 2016 election, calling it a made-up story. Ridiculous, a hoax. Trump has characterized all efforts to investigate the foreign attacks on American democracy during the campaign as a witch hunt. In March, he insisted the Russians had no impact on our votes whatsoever. Speaking for himself, however, he told me that it stretches credulity to think the Russians didn't turn the election. This is James Clapper. And now talking about this Oxford University Press book called Cyber War, How Russian Hackers and Trolls Helped Elect a President. What We Don't, Can't and Do Know by Kathleen Hall Jameson. The lady in question writing this article met with Jameson and asked her point blank if she thought that Trump would be president without the aid of Russians. She didn't equivocate. No, she said, clearly cognizant of the gravity of her statement, she clarified, if everything else is a constant, no, I do not. Her case is based on a growing body of knowledge about the electronic warfare waged by Russian trolls and hackers, whom she terms discourse saboteurs. And this is what I called a constant state of destabilized perception. She continued, I'm not arguing that Russians pulled the voting levers. I'm arguing that they persuaded enough people to either vote a certain way or not vote at all. This is when I was saying this, they damped down Hillary Clinton's bona fides and turnout. They kind of revved up Donald Trump's. Jameson makes a strong case that in 2016, Russian masterminds pulled off a technological and political coup. Moreover, she concludes, the American media inadvertently helped them achieve their goals. Talking about why Hillary Clinton was reluctant to call it out, looks at the sequence of events. The Russians tried to minimize the vote of African Americans. Bogus Kremlin-sponsored ads circulated online, including one depicting a black woman in front of an African Americans for Hillary sign that urged voters to tweet or text rather than vote. Avoid the line, vote from home. Jameson argues that the impact of the Russian cyber war was likely enhanced by its consistency with messaging from Trump's campaign and by its strategic alignment with the campaign's geographic and demographic objectives. She got caught in a total lie, Trump said. Her papers went out to all her friends at the banks, Goldman Sachs and everybody else, and she said things, WikiLeaks, that just came out, and she lied. Now she's blaming the lie on the late, great Abraham Lincoln. During the weeks that the debates took place, the moderators and the media became consumed by an anti-Clinton narrative driven by Russian hackers. In Cyber War, Jameson writes, the stolen goods lent credibility to those moderator queries. She concluded that the Russian hackers had also been alarmingly successful in reframing the American political narrative in the crucial period leading up to the second debate. WikiLeaks' release was a Russian-backed effort to rescue Trump's candidacy by generating a scandal to counterbalance the Access Hollywood tape and the intelligence report on Russian interference. Jameson writes, it worked splendidly. If not for WikiLeaks, she writes, the media discourse in those crucial days likely would have remained locked on two topics advantageous to Clinton: Russian election subversion and Trump's treatment of women. Then so basically, most discussions about the 2016 election results she believed had been misguidedly framed around the question of whether the Russians had changed votes directly. There wasn't evidence for this. This is what I was talking about, non-linearity. Instead, she suspected the Russians had influenced who voted or didn't vote, and that could have changed the outcome. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you'll probably be rewarded mightily by our press. And this is the piece I wrote. We have a deviate tomahawk. In that I was saying we copy, there's a voice, we have a gross oscillation here, there's some interference, I've gone redundant, but I'm not sure it's healthy. We are clearing an out frame to locate source. Thank you, Colorado. So then, from feeding the hothouse conspiracy frenzy online, constant state of destabilized perception, timely and judicious doses of WikiLeaks leaks, which drained Hillary Clinton's bona fides and her turnout and motivated Trump's, what we have witnessed is remarkable and noteworthy. This is a photograph of Nicolas Maduro meeting with his cabinet, and Bloomberg is saying Shinzo Abe looks set to remain in office till 2021. Let's move on to the markets. Jamie at Reuters is talking of hedge funds smelling Brexit blood, circling sterling. Sterling's at 131.25. Increased their net short position in sterling in the latest week to 79,258 contracts. Let's have a look at the currency markets. The euro is at 117.68, dollar index 94.25, Japanese yen 112.88, Swiss franc 0.9666, the pound, as I said, 131.25, the Aussie is at 0.7253, India rupee back right on a record low, 72.815. That's all about oil. I'll get to that in a moment. South Korean won 11.1951. The Real 409.27. Egyptian pound 17.9123. South African rand 14.3890. That level was the lowest it used to get at a time when Zuma was decapitating all his finance ministers. Dollar index, this is a 3-month chart. Charlie has put me in two minds about this with his theory about Trump declaring victory. So I'm a little bit sidelined, but I still am of the view US interest rates are going higher than the market is currently predicting. Euro dollar last trading at 117.67. It's still staying in this range. Let's see, 118 probably should get us worried. Commodity markets, gold is at 1200 on the nose. Brent crude, and I wrote a piece in November 2017 on the 13th when it scaled a 2.5-year high of $64.65. And I was saying that the oil market had priced out geopolitical risk and was now in the process of repricing it back in. Brent crude rose above $80.50, which is the highest since November 2014. That was yesterday morning, and then continued to make gains, closing 3.1% higher, with both Mercuria Energy and Trafigura now expecting a return to $100 due to the potential loss in Iranian supply. OPEC gave a clear answer to Trump, who criticized the group for pushing for higher prices. They obviously refused to submit. While the escalation of the US-China trade war is a negative factor, it's overshadowed by OPEC's bullish comment. WTI rallied to $72.79. The contract climbed $1.30 yesterday. And this is another chart of Brent. This was from JCAP Energy. And the interesting thing was it actually failed about 4 times this year to break 80. So now this is a very, very big move, and I think you just have a stop below 80. In fact, Peter Brandt is calling it a layup trade. Deck Brent crude on its way to $85.62. Have a read of what I was writing in November last year about the capture of a 32-year-old wannabe king and the future price of crude oil. Turkey's lira gained with speculation a detained American pastor could be free next week. Sub-Saharan Africa, the new scramble for Africa. David Pilling in the Financial Times. A Turkish company is generating part of Ghana's power supply. Another one just this month finished a flashy new terminal at the country's international airport. A Philippine utility is about to take over running the electricity company of Ghana. Even Ghana's biggest flyover, named after liberation hero Kwame Nkrumah, was built by Brazilians. A new group of outside powers from China to Brazil and from Russia to Turkey is gaining a commercial and strategic foothold across a vast continent that was until recently dominated by former European colonial powers and the US. States from the Gulf, the Middle East jockeying for influence in the Horn of Africa, Chinese companies locking up cobalt assets vital for electric cars in the DR Congo, or India replacing the US as the biggest importer of Nigerian crude. All over Africa, new participants are making their presence felt. That's a good thing. Carlos Lopez says he has yet to meet an African leader who is not animated by the new possibilities opening up in an era that might be termed post-colonial. It gives Africans much more room to maneuver, he says. The level of ambition from leaders has gone up very much in response to these incentives to do more with infrastructure and financing and to dare defy Western pressure. They are finding it very exciting. China supplanted the US as Africa's biggest trading partner in 2009. Last year, China-Africa trade was $170 billion off its 2014 peak, but still nearly 20 times higher than at the start of the millennium. By contrast, US trade with sub-Saharan Africa was just $39 billion. Africa-India trade jumped more than tenfold from $7.2 billion in 2001 to $78 billion in 2014, making India Africa's fourth biggest trading partner, according to the UN Economic Commission for Africa. Washington is watching this growing influence with alarm. Last year, China opened its first overseas military base in Djibouti, adding to the presence of the US and others. Djibouti is now heavily indebted to China. It's a prime example of what some US critics have labeled debt diplomacy. The US continues to be a player, but it's caught in the post-Iraq era. Its policies driven by securocrats as quasi-Prempeh. Poor Mrs. May really has a lot of catching up to do, says Lord Malloch Brown, a British diplomat. We started hearing complaints about what China was doing in Africa, grumbling from the British and the Americans, but my God, they've created a competitive spur to the rest. Talking about Europe, they're responding to a domestic constituency agitated about the influx of migrants. Yes, that's true to some degree. Turks decided years ago they wanted to do more business in Africa, that they opened embassies, opened up import facilities and started more flights. Turkish Airlines now operates routes to more than 40 African cities. UAE provided Ethiopia with a $3 billion in aid and investments, helping to avert a foreign currency crisis. A month later, Saudi Arabia promised Cyril Ramaphosa $10 billion of investment, mainly in the power sector. So we've got a very dynamic environment around us, but make no mistake, all these countries are heavily indebted, and in most cases, big trouble. And that's why the West is pushing back. They're seeing an opportunity to reposition back in. Global trade with sub-Saharan Africa, this is from David Pilling. Ethiopia is a rarity in Africa. It has existed in a coherent form for more than 2,000 years and largely escaped European colonization. Stratfor, very interesting article about power projection in Ethiopia. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed met with a delegation from the IMF for annual Article 4 consultations. The IMF team presented their new findings on the economic and financial developments in Ethiopia. PM Abiy noted sustaining Ethiopia's rapid and stable growth is his utmost priority. Beijing's big brother tech needs African faces. Interesting article in Foreign Affairs. The CloudWalk deal is the first Chinese AI project in Africa. Google is opening its first African AI research center in Ghana. The Chinese are willing to make an investment in a market as volatile as Zimbabwe, where companies from other countries are not. This is a really worrying development. Angola has arrested the ex-president's son on a $500 million transfer fraud. placed Jose Filomeno dos Santos, the son of former Angolan President Jose Eduardo dos Santos, under preventative detention. And I said this in January, I like what I'm seeing in Angola. I was talking about being long Angolan Eurobonds, and I think that's turned out to be a good trade. Rand Gold and Barrick Gold have agreed to an $18 billion gold mining deal to combine Barrick Gold and Rand Gold resources. South African all shares down 3.93% this year. Dollar versus Rand. Have a look at the 6-month chart. We're right at an interesting chart point. Personally, I think it's going to back up from here. Nigerian all share down 15.14% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange up 7.64% year to date. Look at this little video. It's of Lewa Conservancy, and it's of a chap called W. Kamau Bell on CNN with Anthony Bourdain. It's a short thing. Have a look. Food insecurity rising in Africa. A third of all people living in sub-Saharan Africa face severe food insecurity. Baobab Foods, a leading distributor and supplier, has seen an exploding growth in demand for baobab products in recent years. What marvelous trees they are. Look at this infographic from Business Daily. This is of Kenya's debt. KPMG is saying the Kenyan government can potentially collect 48 billion shillings a year from the new National Housing Development Levy, a massive amount when compared to the 13 billion that the NSSF collects a year. My piece over the weekend was about how bears are roaming at the NSC, and then I saw this bloodbath in African markets. Look at the year-to-date losses. This was caught everybody's attention, now happening SGR Gong Tunnel breakthrough ceremony in Gong, Kajiado County. What struck everybody was all the signage was in Chinese. The new tax burden by Gado. Madatali Chatur, who owns the very famous Diamond Plaza here in Nairobi, has put his 76 billion shilling real estate portfolio on the block. And that's a huge portfolio. And that took me back to hot chocolate, and instead of everyone's being a winner, it seems everyone's a seller, baby. That's no lie. Safaricom, which had retreated 20% over the last 4 weeks before yesterday, rebounded 4.17%. Equity Bank rebounded 3.87%. That's up 6.28% on a total return basis this year. KCB up 4.61%. We'd want to see some follow through. It was those three stocks rebounding that lifted the indices yesterday. KenGen firmed 0.77%. Kenya Power unchanged at 465. It's an all-time low. It's down 49% year to date. Nation Media rebounded 2.94% off an all-time low. Kenol Kogel surged 6.374%, close at 1585. That's a good share. Nairobi all shares down 12.76% year to date. NSE 20 is down 22.6% year to date. Nairobi all share closed in a bear market on Friday, rebounded out of it yesterday. Be interesting to see what happens now.